Right, we continue to see the effects of the lawlessness and chaos created by the Biden-Harris administration's open border. A recent report revealed that forced labor and prostitution among underage migrants have more than tripled under the Biden-Harris administration. Now, there's nothing compassionate about these types of border policies. We've looked at the effect upon crime. We've looked at how it's impacting local communities in our schools, and children are suffering as a result of this. What's compassionate about that? Joining me now to discuss this is Madeleine Rowley, a free press investigative reporter who spent time in Texas reporting on this growing tragedy. Madeleine, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thanks so much for having me, Tony. It's great to be here.
So you reported on this explosion in sex trafficking. Tell us what you found and what you were expecting.
I did. So I traveled down to Dallas, Texas, and I shadowed a private investigator with a small nonprofit called Shepherd's Watch. And they gather intelligence. And they sort of go through dozens of online platforms, websites, and they're able to find trafficking victims. And I was able to shadow what they do and see what they do firsthand. We found a girl or a woman. It's hard to distinguish the age because the traffickers often put emojis over their faces of the women and girls in their profiles on these websites. And we were able to find a girl or a woman, and we saw firsthand at the motel. She opened the door, closed the door, and a man threw up the shades in the window below her. And it was, the private investigator said that's likely her pimp or trafficker. So this is something that I've been told through my reporting. Oh, it's in your backyard. You'd be so surprised. And while in Dallas, I was able to see that is unfortunately true. I was able to see how easy it is to order a young woman off one of these platforms. And I want to be clear that these platforms are not on the dark web. These are just regular websites that you can go on. And they are also, it's also happening across social media platforms.
Madeleine, I know that many law enforcement agencies are pursuing this. I mean, we saw a raid in Ohio this week where the Attorney General arrested 132 people. In your article, you talk about Sheriff Grady in Florida, who has been aggressive on this. But it's so prominent, it's difficult for law enforcement to track all of the leads that are out there, is it not?
That's correct. And that's where organizations like Shepherd's Watch come in to help them do the legwork. It's also just a pure problem with manning. There's just simply not enough resources and not enough people on local law enforcement staff to track down every single one of these leads. That's how many there are. The private investigator I shadowed said they tracked 14,000 sex solicitation ads alone in Dallas per week. That is a lot to cover. And she also told me that within 3 months of Biden opening the border in 2021, she saw that most of the ads that they were seeing were of migrant women and girls. So, this is directly tied to Biden opening the border.
So Madeleine, let me ask you this question. These girls, women coming across the border, are they coming across to enter into the sex industry?
No, that's another very important thing. Often not. There are criminal cartel and gangs. Namely, for example, we've heard a lot about Tren de Aragua. They will smuggle girls across the border, promising them a better life, promising them jobs, only to trick them and force them into prostitution after they have crossed the border. So that's one very important thing is, they're telling these women one thing and doing another.
Now, for the minors that are entrapped in this, is this not at least a portion of it, a byproduct of the unaccompanied minor program, where the federal government is actually releasing these minors into the custody of people who are going to abuse them and exploit them?
Yes, that's something else that I found through my reporting. When unaccompanied children cross the border, and there were 137,000 of them alone in 2023, they cross the border and then are then put into the federal government's custody. And the federal government contracts with specific NGOs who then shelter them. And the government is tasked with vetting the sponsors that these children are released to. And a lot of the times they're released to, family members or friends, people that they know. But sometimes, they're released to what they call Category 3 sponsors or unrelated sponsors. And a recent Office of Investigation report found that across a sample of 343 unaccompanied children, 19% of them were released to sponsors who were still awaiting their FBI fingerprints. So they are not properly vetting these sponsors that these kids go to. And then I spoke to several people who confirmed that their sponsors are the ones who then traffic them. And it's either the sponsors or another adult who is living in the home.
What ages are we talking about, Madeleine?
It's mostly between the ages of 15 to 17, but it does vary.
And this is directly connected, according to the experts that you're working with, directly connected to the border policy.
That's correct. And I mean, and that's clear with the child eligibility letter increase that we saw. I FOIA'd the federal government to get those updated numbers, and the child eligibility letters are given to the foreign national children who have been proven to be trafficked, whether that's in their country of origin, on the way to the United States, or within the United States. And in 2022 alone, there were 2,200 child eligibility letters given out. In Trump's presidency, there was an average of 625 a year. So that's a huge increase.
Madeleine, this is it's just absolutely shocking and heartbreaking that our government is facilitating the exploitation of women and children. I really appreciate your report. Very insightful. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tony.